Welcome to the Fluffy Scrunchie Sewing Tutorial. These massive scrunchies, I'm obsessed with them. I think they're such a cute addition to any outfit, and they're actually pretty quick and easy to make on your own. So I'm going to show you the steps to make two different kinds, one that has nice frills and then another that has two layers and either bound or serged edges, so you can get exactly the look that you want. This is a free pattern from the Q1 2024 issue of Material Girls magazine, which is a fiber art magazine and community. So check it out at materialgirls.com. There are other free patterns and lots of fun activities inside. You can get the download for free. Let's get started with scrunchie number one. What you'll need to make this one is some fabric, trim, elastic, and then classic sewing materials, a measuring tape, some scissors, some pins, and a safety pin to feed your elastic through the scrunchie. Cut a base that's 5 inches wide by 40 inches long, and you're going to fold that fabric in half with the good sides together and sew the short ends together. Just a basic stitch all the way down to get those short ends connected. Ironing is optional, but will definitely make your life easier. Press that seam open and then fold in approximately 1/4 of an inch on either edge, and you're going to iron that down. This is going to help us hide the raw edges when we insert the trim. Cut a piece of trim that is just over 40 inches long, and then you're going to fold up your fabric so that the wrong sides are on the inside, those edges touch, and place the trim in between the two edges. This will hide all the raw edges on the inside and have your trim peeking out the side of the scrunchie like we want it. Make sure your seam is matched up, and then grab your pins and pin around the entire scrunchie. The reason that we cut just a little over 40 inches when your fabric is 40 inches long is so that at the end you can do a bit of an overlap, and that will make sure that it's just seamless and there are no gaps at the end of the trim. So when you get to the end, just fold over to hide the raw edge a little bit and then pin it in place, and we're going to sew around the outer edge of the fabric right there to hold everything in place. Just leave about an inch open at the end. That's how we're going to insert our elastic. Try to sew as close to the edge as possible so that you make sure you're catching the trim on the inside and it makes a nice line all the way around. Now we're going to insert our elastic. So cut a piece that is about 5 inches long. I'm using 1/4 inch elastic. Lots of different ones will work, but that's what I like for a project like this. You're going to take your safety pin and attach it to one end of the elastic. This will make sure that as we feed it through all this fabric, we don't lose it in there. So insert it through the hole that you've left, and as you start scrunching it up to make sure you don't lose the other end, grab a pin and pin it to the edge of the fabric. When you have that all secured, just start scrunching and getting the elastic through the whole thing. There is a ton of fabric because these are big scrunchies. You want a lot of scrunch, so it might take a while to get there, but when you get to the end, you're just going to peek the safety pin out of the hole so that you have both edges right there. You can remove the pins, hold on to them tight so they don't snap back into the scrunchie, and then go to your sewing machine to sew the ends together. Just go back and forth a bunch of times until it feels secure. Then tuck the elastic into the scrunchie, and the last step is to just sew up that hole by connecting the two lines. Using a 5-inch piece of elastic will make a scrunchie that you can just kind of plop over an already secure ponytail once. I would recommend adding a few more inches of elastic if you want to wrap it around multiple times, but I like the look of this one. I also made one with some gingham fabric and white lace, which might be my favorite. The lace had a pretty thick edge to it, so it makes it really squiggly around the scrunchie. On to scrunchie number 2. This is going to make a nice floppy layered scrunchie. You'll need some fabric, bias tape, or a serger. I'm going to be showing how to bind the edges with bias tape, as well as elastic and pins, measuring tape, and another safety pin to feed your elastic through, as well as scissors, of course. Start by cutting 2 pieces of fabric that measure 3 inches wide by 24 inches long. Since you're doing 2 of the same, I usually just measure the first one and then use the second one as a template to make it super easy to cut both of them. Then you're going to place them good sides together. So you should have them lined up like this, and we're going to sew down one of the long edges, again just a basic stitch, to connect the 2 pieces together. When you have that done, open up your fabric and we're going to fold it. We want the wrong sides together with the short edges touching. We're going to use a French seam to connect these pieces together. So sew along the top. When that's done, use your scissors to cut as close to the seam as possible. And then we're going to flip the entire thing around. The goal is to create a fold and sew down so that the raw edge is encased inside and you don't see a raw edge on either side. So here you can see that I'm folding over exactly on the seam, and that tiny little raw edge is going to be on the inside when I sew down here with a basic stitch. here's a look at what that will look like. So there's no raw edge here, and then when you look on the other side as well, so nice and clean. Don't worry about the other raw edge that you have going around the scrunchie. We are going to hide that later. Now let's focus on the two raw edges that you have on either side of the scrunchie. We're going to either bind these or serge them. I'm going to assume that if you have a serger, you know how to use it. Pick some cute contrasting thread, serge either edge, and you'll be good to go. But I'm going to be showing you how to use bias tape to bind either edge. This is single fold bias tape that I'm using. We're aiming for a final look where the bias tape wraps around either edge, hiding the raw edges and making a nice little trim. So turn this inside out, and the first step is to unfold one side of the single fold bias tape and start lining it up with the raw edge. So it should be raw edge on raw edge, and the good side of the bias tape is face down. To connect the two ends, fold back the beginning of your bias tape like so that there's a fold on the edge instead of a raw edge, and then overlap the end of your bias tape, leaving a little extra at the end. When you pin that in place, that will ensure that this ends seamlessly and that you can cut with a little bit of length out just to make sure there are no gaps. Do this step on both edges, and then make sure that when you get to your French seam, it's pinned down facing the same way to avoid bulkiness. Sew the bias tape down by doing a basic stitch all the way around each edge. Get as close as you can, which will make the next step easier. We're going to fold the bias tape over that edge, and you should see that you have no raw edges on either side because the bias tape is already pre-folded on the other edge. Final step is to sew down this bias tape as close to the edge as possible. Using matching thread, you should hardly be able to see it. Now we're going to add an elastic, so turn your scrunchie right side out, and we're going to fold exactly on the seam. That's how we're going to encase that last raw edge. So you can pin or press that down. We're going to sew a line that's approximately 1/2 inch in from the seam. It needs to be far enough away that your elastic can fit between the seam and this line. Make sure to leave about 1 inch open at the end. That's how we're going to insert the elastic. This is what mine ended up looking like. You can see that there is a hole here where I can insert the elastic. Cut one piece of 5-inch long elastic. My elastic is 1/4 inch wide. Lots of different things will work as long as you have sewn your line away from the seam enough that the channel is large enough to fit your width of elastic. Attach your elastic to a safety pin and open up in between the two layers to find that hole and start inserting the safety pin and bringing this through the channel. When you get to the end of the elastic, make sure to pin it to the fabric on the outside so that you don't lose that end as you're scrunching everything up. It'll take a second to feed everything through. Just feel that safety pin to get everything through the channel, and then you can peek the safety pin out of the hole when you reach the end again, and you should have both ends of elastic. Take off your safety pin and pin, and then sew the ends of the elastic together back and forth until it feels secure. Lastly, just tuck the elastic into the scrunchie and sew that opening closed to finish everything off. Just a basic stitch to connect these two lines together like so. Here's how mine turned out when I get it over my ponytail. I just kind of pull the two layers apart to make them more obvious. Love how this one turned out. I also made a version with 2 pieces of white lace. I didn't actually have to bind or serge the edges because they were already finished off, but I did the same technique of cutting 2 pieces and making the layers to make this super big, fluffy, thick scrunchie. It might be my favorite one. Hope this video tutorial was helpful. Remember, you can find the written pattern in the Q1 issue of Material Girls magazine, along with other fun patterns. You can head to materialgirls.com to see all past issues of the magazine for free, as well as a whole host of other free patterns. So I hope you give it a look and check out what we're up to there. Remember to tag Material Girls in your cute creations. I can't wait to see your scrunchies. Have a great day.